You know what I find genuinely fascinating? Last Sunday, around 127 million people were glued to their TVs, yelling, stressing out, losing their minds over the Super Bowl. And at the exact same time, there was this whole other group of people, totally calm, totally indifferent. The Super Bowl came and went, and it barely even registered. And no, I'm not talking about people who pretend not to care just to look cool or different. I mean the people who saw all the hype, the ads, the halftime show, the insane energy, and felt nothing, just background noise. So why is that? Why do some brains light up like a Christmas tree when the Super Bowl starts, while others stay completely dark? Let's clear up a big myth first. Caring about sports isn't some built-in human setting. Your brain doesn't come preloaded with release dopamine when football happens. What's actually going on involves something neuroscientists call mirror neurons. Research, including studies by Dr. Marco Iacobini at UCLA, shows that when fans watch their favorite player pull off an amazing play, their brains don't just observe it, they simulate it. Neurologically speaking, your brain briefly acts like you did the thing. You scored the touchdown. You won the game. And that's why your brain releases a rush of dopamine, the reward chemical, even though the hardest thing you did all night was dip a chip into guacamole. Psychologists call this vicarious reward. But if you're someone who doesn't care about the Super Bowl, that whole mirror system just doesn't really fire. Watching a tackle feels about as stimulating as watching a microwave hit zero. And that doesn't mean you're boring, it just means your brain is tuned to different things. Art, ideas, code, or honestly, anything else. This brings us to something psychologists call optimal stimulation level. It's a concept rooted in Eysenck's personality theory, and the idea is simple. Every brain has a specific sweet spot for stimulation. Think of it like a volume knob. Some people have a high threshold. Daily life doesn't stimulate them enough, so they crave chaos. The noise, the yelling, the flashing lights, the high stakes of the Super Bowl, just to feel normal. For them, the volume has to be turned up to 11. But for the so-called shadow population, it's often the opposite. Their nervous systems are wired with a lower threshold. So the Super Bowl isn't entertainment, it's a sensory assault. The yelling, the constant camera cuts, the sheer amount of noise. It pushes them past their optimal level, straight into anxiety or exhaustion. And it's not that they hate fun. Biologically speaking, a quiet room with a book feels like a warm bath for their brain, while the Super Bowl feels like being trapped inside a blender. Neither is better, neither is worse. They're just different biological requirements for staying sane. Now let's zoom out for a second, to the sociology of it. Humans are tribal by design. According to social identity theory developed by Henri Tajfel in the 1970s, a huge part of who we are comes from the groups we belong to. For millions of people, sports teams are a modern, sanitized version of ancient tribal warfare. It's us versus them, just with foam fingers instead of spears. But for people who don't care about the Super Bowl, that tribal software doesn't run on the sports operating system. When they look at two teams, they don't see good versus evil. They literally just see grown men wearing different color-coded laundry fighting over an oblong object. Without that tribal attachment, the emotional stakes disappear. It's like watching two strangers argue over a parking spot. You might glance at it, but you're definitely not going to paint your face blue over it. Here is where it gets psychologically dense. Let's talk about locus of control, a concept introduced by psychologist Julian Rotter. It describes how much control you feel you have over the events in your life. Sports fandom, in many ways, relies on a strong external locus of control. You're investing a huge amount of emotional energy into something you can't actually influence. You can scream, you can pray, you can wear your lucky, unwashed socks, but the outcome is completely out of your hands. And for a lot of people, that surrender is thrilling. But people who dislike sports often lean toward an internal locus of control. They hate that feeling of helplessness. To them, sitting through 4 hours of manufactured tension with zero agency isn't entertainment, it's voluntary anxiety. They'd rather play a video game,
cook a meal, build a bookshelf, activities where their input directly determines the outcome. They don't want to watch the ride, they want to drive the car.
And finally, let's talk about the awkward part. The Super Bowl isn't just a game. It's a cultural ritual, and opting out comes with a real social cost. When you tell a diehard fan you don't care, the reaction is often immediate defensive, like you just insulted their grandmother's cooking. Why? Because sports function as a shared social language, and when you opt out, you're quietly disrupting that sense of social cohesion. For non-fans, a Super Bowl party can feel like an anthropological endurance test. You're expected to perform enthusiasm, nodding at plays you don't understand, laughing at commercials you don't find funny, just to avoid being labeled the buzzkill. And that can feel incredibly isolating. It's like being the only sober person at a drunk party, except everyone else is drunk on adrenaline and you're just standing there, waiting for the dip to run out.
So if you're someone who spent last Sunday wishing you were literally anywhere else, here's the takeaway. There is nothing broken about you. You're not boring, and you're not antisocial. Maybe your mirror neurons just don't fire for competitive sports. Maybe your optimal stimulation level is lower. Maybe you prefer an internal locus of control. Or maybe you just never installed the tribal software update. All of those are completely valid ways to exist. Society works because we're different. We need the people who scream at touchdowns, and we need the people who keep the world quiet enough to think. So embrace your indifference. Enjoy the silence. And if this hit home for you, let me know in the comments. Are you team screaming at the TV or team doing literally anything else? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird wiring of our brains. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.